But there are a lot of people who come and say, "हम आपके लिए सब कुछ कर देंगे." I don't like that at all because I really like to work with specialists who in their niches are unbeatable. Fundamentally, marketing is supposed to be a revenue and a profitability generating function. Guy or a girl who is the solutions person is not the problems person. So get your hands dirty as much as you can. The beauty about our category is that our customers know much more about us before they come to us than we know about our customers who walked into our sales galleries.
Hey there, welcome to Marketing Mavericks with Indiefolio. Today we have Karan Kumar with us, who's the CMO at Hero Realty. Karan's had an incredible experience where he started off with ITC, spent 15 years there, and then went on to head marketing at some very, very interesting companies. As he says, he's worked across Roti, Kapda, Makan multiple times. A lot of fantastic advice for agency owners and freelancers, as well as, of course, young marketeers. Thanks a lot for your time and welcome to the podcast, Karan.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You've been, CMO at various places, and I'd love to unpack that journey today so it helps young marketeers specifically understand how career progression actually happens in the real world. But before all of that, let me take you back to, I believe you're in St. Stephen's College studying history. So how is it that, you decided that marketing is going to be a career choice? If you could take us back to those days and tell us your journey from, history to doing marketing, that'll be awesome.
So truth be told, honestly, I didn't really know if marketing was a career choice back then when I joined college. I joined college and I joined history in particular because that was a certain kind of a subject that intrigued me a lot more than just mathematics or actually eco was the other subject which I would have done. But eco, pol science and history were always my top three in a manner of speaking. And Stephen's obviously was very, very good at history. Stephen's did not have pol science. And eco was the other one that I applied for, but didn't really get through. For me, history was always a very, very fun and interesting subject because it always had the broadest palette of telling you what's happened through the ages. Whether it's people, whether it's civilization, whether it's economies, whether it's politics, whether it is sociology, anthropology, how things have evolved, what cultures, what traditions, from protectionism to laissez-faire to anything else that's come in the way, to the histories of the various parts of the world, the Americans, the Russians, the Europeans, of course, the Chinese, the Asians, the Indians, etc., etc. So for me, it was always about being, I was naturally very curious kind of a person. And I just did not want to fit into only one particular scheme of learning. So for me, education at that point of time was still very, very broad based. It's a very top of the funnel kind of a thing, if I was to look at it from a marketing balance point of view. So I did not really specialize into chem or physics or maths, things that I could at that point of time. And I had a lot of fun exploring everything that happened with the world, with its people, the politics, the economy, the trade. It was super fun. And a lot of my classmates from Stephen's history were naturally inclined to go into the services. Mm-hmm. So a lot of Indian administrative services, IAS people happened to do history at college. It's an option that I considered as well. But for me, consumer and consumer marketing started taking certain deep roots in a manner of speaking, why people behave the way they behave. How do people purchase? Why do they purchase what they purchase? Why do they purchase, a different brand over another brand when the product essentially inside of the packaging is the same? Who's communicating how? Are there any triggers that are getting, buttons that are getting triggered when somebody's communicating in a certain way versus the other way? I was a very communications forward person. So I was always trying to understand who's saying what, how, and how do I communicate. I was also involved with a little bit of university politics. I remember back in the day. So there was communication, speeches, was always a big part of what I did. I used to actually represent India in debating back in college. So again, communication and what articulation, who speaks how, what proposition, how is proposition framed, essentially what the source code of where marketing as a thought, as a concept kind of came into my head. And then one just kind of segued from one thing to the other. The truth be told, when I entered college, did I know I'm going to do marketing? No. Did I see a lot of my batchmates going for the services? Yes. Was I instinctively attracted towards the services? Yes and no. No hard feelings either way. But then eventually, as I kind of progressed during those 3 years, I think the tilt towards marketing or a customer consumer facing function became stronger and stronger.
Fantastic. I used to hate history in school, but I learned, I read Sapiens a few years ago. And I mean, as you said, why do we do what we do? Is such an important reason to actually learn history. And I really wished we were taught the genuine history, of human. It really kind of,
But that's something. But that's something I need to give credit to my college, right? That's why Stevens as a college stood out from all over the colleges. Of course, we had to memorize some bit of dates, which was the most boring and pedantic part. Truth be told, our college never really focused on that. It was always about the why behind the what, through the ages and through the cultures. And as I said, people, politics, economy, religion, spirituality, culture. And that was a very, very fascinating palette. So I have to give my teachers all the credit for kindling, actually, for furthering that interest. Yeah.
Fantastic. You did a BA, you were part of debates, which, by the way, if you're a student listening to this, I think Karan's part of a huge population of people who've been on the podcast who are inspired about marketing by doing extracurricular activities. So just try your hand at that. But generally what happens that a lot of people also are in the same boat as you today. They do these curricular activities, they love some ad, they love some movie, they see some cool documentary, कि ये अच्छा ad बनाया, and they feel marketing is about making ads, working with celebrities, doing shoots, etc. And then the more they try to learn about it, the more they realize, okay, I have to do insight mapping, market study, understand market share, and a number and analytical driven. At the same time, it's pretty creative too. So what, after doing this for so many years, like, who do you think marketing is for? Is it more for a creative brain or is it more for an analytical brain?
So I'll tell you what. I think I'm so glad that you brought up this question, because a lot of people confuse marketing with marcons, and that really has led to the downfall of marketing and the CMO as a designation and the CMO as a person. Therefore, you had suddenly the growth of the chief growth officer and the chief this officer and the chief that officer. Fundamentally, what we need to understand is that marketing is supposed to be a revenue and a profitability generating function. Revenue because you need to be playing your role in generating demand, and demand on the back of preference, and preference on the back of consideration, and consideration on the back of awareness. Okay, so awareness, consideration, preference, demand. Demand, by demand, I'm saying sales. The end closure of the product. It's like a funnel that kind of moves there. That's one part of what marketing is supposed to do. The other part that marketing is supposed to do is to be able to strengthen your brand, to be able to command a premium more than it did earlier, and certainly more than other brands operating in the same category. What does that do? That makes your brand more profitable. So there is revenue on one side and profitability on the other side. Revenue is linked to demand generation or demand creation. Profitability is linked to expanding margins. And expanding margins in turn is linked to brand strength. Yeah. So marketing for me has always been the sole purpose of marketing for me has to be able to sell more, sell better. Obviously create products that satisfy a certain need and demand. And to be able to sell it at a premium which helps the brand profit. right?
Hmm.
Reasonable amount of profit. Now, that definition of how much profit is good profit varies from one company and one brand to the other. But let's just keep it at a reasonable amount at this point of time. Now, for this to happen, what do you need? You certainly need a part of your brain which is analytics focused. You to understand the numbers, to understand the data, to understand the trends, uh, to understand what people are saying and what people are not saying. So what's being said and what's being left unsaid. Uh, and then you need another part of your brain which needs to be very, very creative and instinctive when it comes to creating propositions, creating ads, communications, artworks, colors, fonts, whether the layouts are balanced, whether the layouts are or the creators themselves are clutter breaking or not, so on and so forth. So there is very clearly a left and a right side of the brain that needs to operate together. It is not an either or. It is not an either or. If you want to be a successful, almost one man fighting machine or one woman fighting machine as a function, marketing needs to do both. Yeah. The third aspect, of course, is to continually focus on innovations that are relevant and meaningful. And what do I mean by innovations that are relevant and meaningful? Innovation not for the sake of innovation, but innovations that genuinely satisfy unstated but an experienced customer need, unstated but experienced, or an innovation which can create a need which does not exist today at all, but can be created if you were to give somebody an option of a new product. Take, for example, nobody really wanted AirPods, right? Before the concept of AirPods was still, nobody wanted AirPods. Everybody is very clear with a lot of wired headsets or headphones. Everybody was very, very comfortable with the concept of on-ear headphones. Yeah. But once the AirPods came in, something that was wireless, something that was running on Bluetooth, something that went inside your ear, something that looks much, much, much smaller and aesthetically pleasing, there was a demand that was created for that.
Right.
Looking at the iPad, before the pad came in, nobody thought of a concept of an iPad.
Right.
Yeah. Who wanted a slate on which you could not even type using keyboards?
Right.
And then, of course, now over a period of time, those concepts have emerged, right? And the iPad has become whatever it's become. The phone's screens have become larger, so they become miniaturized iPad equivalents or miniaturized screen equivalents. I think fundamentally that's an example of creating a need where none existed.
Yeah.
Creating a need where none existed. So you need to be perceptive enough to figure those things out and to make a relevant pitch into how you can make your consumers' life better by either giving them something that they realize they need but they don't often talk about it, or by creating a need they're not even consciously aware of but can make their lives better.
Makes sense. I want to now ask you about post jobs, or at least what to do in your earlier part of your career. So obviously you have to optimize for learning when you're young. Now what happens once again is that people have too many options floating around that today people say, work in a young startup, you'll do everything, you'll learn a lot. They say go to the agency side, you'll again, work across categories, you'll learn a lot. People say sweat under the sun, sell, you'll understand the customer very well, do sales. That's also what they say. And then obviously there's a huge case for working in a large structured company like the way you did, right? In an ITC. So could you make a case as to why should somebody probably work and try to get into a large company in the earlier set of their careers just the way you did? What's the advantage?
Yeah, so let me look at it from a slightly different perspective, if you would allow me to. One is that I think I would say that when you're starting off in your career, never mind the company, whether it's large or not. Never mind the company, whether it's a legacy organization or a startup organization. You need to start your career with a very, very strong understanding and a gradual building of at least one core function that needs to be your super strength, your super skill as you go along in your life. Yeah. So this pull to be a generalist right from day one, it might give you some a lot of excitement, but it gives you width. It doesn't give you depth. I strongly feel that there needs to be a function where you need to be strongly anchored, and the further down the roots of the tree go under the various layers of the soil, the solid and more grounded the tree becomes for it to actually reach as high as it can reach, you know, over the ground. So my one thing is going to be that, whether you're joining a legacy organization or a startup organization, both have their advantages. Legacy organizations give you a good understanding of first principles in a slightly more methodical manner. Startup organizations give you a great understanding of first principles in a slightly more chaotic but a higher energy manner. So both have their own advantages. If you have the choice, normally we don't, pick up a good boss. It doesn't matter the organization. A good boss is what you need in the first 5, 6, 7 years of your life, who will ground you, who will show you the way, at some levels control you, at some levels give you the independence, and get your first principles very, very strongly in place. Yeah, it's easier said than done. You can't choose bosses, you can't pick up bosses. So you will invariably go to organizations where you think good people already reside or work.
Right.
So maybe that becomes one marker. But if you have an option of joining a startup, joining a smaller organization, please research who you will be working with. Please research who the founder is. Please research what the culture there is. Please research what there are enough in most startups where you've had founders who not been very helpful from the point of view of learning and education and growing up. A lot of people have moved out of startups complaining about their bosses and the work culture. And there have been startups where there have been brilliant mentors in the form of founders and co-founders. So if you can Google and research and do whatever you can, pick a good boss rather than a good company. Companies will follow. The starting point is that you need to have a very, very strong foundation on at least one core functional area, which needs to be an area where you can, land on your feet, even if you're pushed from the topmost floor of a building. He's like the cat, right? The cat, wherever the cat gets thrown off from, magically always lands on its feet. So you need to have that one place on which you can say, I can fall back on this even with my eyes closed.
Yeah.
And that is the learning that needs to happen, I think, starting from when you start your career into the first 5, 6, 7, 8 years, rather than, legacy versus. And on the question that you initially asked about learning and unlearn, I think learning, honestly, my friend, if you need to be successful in life and by successful, I'm saying you need to be relevant in life, you need to keep learning and unlearning till your very last day. Yeah, so learning is not relegated to the first 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. You learn from the teams you lead. You learn from the people you work with. There is a very, very clear relationship and exchange of ideas, education there. So learning happens all throughout. But I think find a good teacher. Find a good teacher as your first and your second boss, hopefully. That should then thereafter put you on the right course.
I want to now talk a little bit about what's keeping you busy today, right? Which is your focus on real estate marketing. Now, the intention is for anybody who's interested in this space, is in this space, or wants to build in this space. I just, wanted to understand from you. I think you've done this, I think twice, if I'm not wrong, once before. Right now, obviously, you're in, Hero Realty. And before that, I believe you are in, DLF as well, right? So, I think when I look at it from an outsider's perspective, whenever my parents have gone on buying a house, it's generally been through agents, right? And I don't know how much of a pull the brand creates from a marketing standpoint. Yes, I think these names are known and reputation is seen, and things like, do they give the OC on time? Do they construct on time is what's been asked. So very curious, what's the role of marketing today in real estate, right? I think you're selling, as you said, 5 crores and very expensive 50 crores items also.
Yeah.
What are the channels you employ today to ensure that you realize such a large value sale?
So I'll tell you what, I think for me, the way I see it, real estate is the single most expensive purchase you normally make in your lives. I'm saying this for an average Indian average customer. Of course, keeping the exceptions out of the ring here. The single largest, most expensive purchase you ever make
Correct.
is real estate. Unless you have inherited wealth or inherited assets,
Right.
which could be generationally handed down over a period of time. Yeah. So if somebody was to tell you that as a marketing person, as a business person, where is the relevance of creating a brand? This the most required. A brand that speaks on authenticity, a brand that speaks on building trust, which is the cornerstone of everything that you need to do, cornerstone of everything I do through the last 23 years that I've been working, building trust with your consumers. I think that opportunity in real estate is probably the strongest, is probably the most required. Yeah. And before that, before real estate, since I worked with the medical healthcare industry, I'm saying the healthcare industry, whether it's IVF fertility or whether it's cardiology or whether it is gastro, whatever medical intervention your body requires. Yeah. That's the other place where your trust on the practice and your trust on the practitioner,
Right.
the practice, which is a medicine, the practitioner, which is a doctor or surgeon, needs to be very, very high, right? So for me, healthcare and real estate are probably the places where you need to feel most secure before making your choice of where you want to put your money or where you want to put your life in whose hands. Yeah. Your life's earnings and your life. Let's put it that way. Of course, things like OC, of course, like the developer's credibility is very important. But then I don't see that as being very different from marketing, right? Because all of these are extremely critical inputs that get into reputation management. And reputation and credibility is at the core of any brand, whether it is a baby food brand, whether it is chips brand, whether it is a garment shirts. I told you I worked with Will's Lifestyle, John Pierce when I was in ITC. I worked with Fab India after that. So reputation and credibility is equally important whether you're building a confectionery brand, a notebook and stationery brand, a processed food brand, a furniture, wherever. You can think of it from whatever. So if the single biggest purchase of your life requires a story to be told, and by story I'm saying it in the right earnest meaning of that word story, then I think it is a job which most marketers should absolutely love getting into, because here you have the opportunity of creating a cohesive story that makes sense and that gives people the confidence to invest. Now, in real estate, of course, you mentioned DLF. I worked there. Hero Realty, I currently work here. And then there are a lot of other developers, for example, in the south and in the west. You know, the Piramals, the Shobhas, the Hiranandanis, the Purvankaras, the so on and so forth. Now, these are all big, big brands that people trust a lot of their hard-earned money on. How do these brands become brands which are preferred? Go back to the funnel that I said. Awareness. You know a lot of brands doing this. Yeah. From awareness, you need to come to preference. So you need to come to consideration that this brand is relevant for me, can be one of the many options that can be relevant. From that consideration, we get into preference. Whereas out of all the so many brands, this particular one which is relevant to me, now there are a couple that could be relevant to me. Out of all the ones that are relevant to me, this is the one that I would prefer finally. And then you go forward and close the sale. Right? So for me, the marketing playbook plays seamlessly well in the case of real estate as well, as it did in the case of CPG, as it did in the case of medical sciences, right? It's just that it's been spoken about in CPG much longer and on greater number of platforms and forums, and in real estate, lesser number of platforms and forums. So that's one. Second is that the real estate sector for a long time was not regulated very well, and that led to certain players taking advantage of the consumers or of the customers. Mm-hmm. And therefore, the sector ended up creating a bit of a disrepute for itself because some people did a disservice to the sector by behaving the way they behaved. right?
Right.
So, if anything, as a responsible brand, as a responsible player in the sector, it is your business to ensure that everything that you do needs to repose faith and rekindle faith in your brand and product.
Mm.
And that faith is generated only through authenticity, honesty, trust, no over promises, but only over delivery.
Mm.
Yeah. And for me, I think real estate is that perfect opportunity where you can bring all of this together.
I have a follow up, a little bit more tactical. Is this from a channel standpoint a category which does well on digital, or is it still very mainline in India?
No, the discoverability today is happening on digital significantly higher than mainline. You know, the beauty about our category is that our customers know much more about us before they come to us than we know about our customers who walked into our sales galleries.
Right.
Look at it this way, you know, I say the dice is loaded in their favor. So a prospective customer who's walking into your sales gallery or into your sales office has done so much research on what you've done earlier, what you've done in the past, what your delivery record, track record is, what your brand promise has been, what your reputation is, what your current product looks like, what are the features, what are the amenities, what are the USPs, what are the price point. The customer has done so much research on you and on your product, and you just don't know anything about that person. You know, before you walk into my gallery, you would have done all the research that you could have done, whether on Google or on other platforms. And which is where influencers become very important. And I'll come to that in a sec, because that's another very, very important discovery mechanism for the real estate business, like a lot of other categories. So the interesting part is that your customers know much more. Your potential customers know so much more about you than you know about them.
Right.
So online for discoverability is massive.
Right.
And then digital for lead generation is also massive, which is where you come into the entire performance marketing space, right? So whether it's discoverability or whether it's lead generation, digital is supremely important in the overall mix of things. And its importance stands overstated. Influencers is the other piece that I was mentioning, right? Influence is not just about selling beauty products anymore, or good looking products, good looking people with good looking products anymore. I think a lot of people are now consuming influencers as another source of credibility, as another source of validation, as another, and especially in the real estate business, since I represent that right now, you look at influencers who are originally channel partners. So channel partners playing the role of influencers, other customers who've been, various stakeholders and cultural influence, cultural tastemakers playing the role of influencers as well. Influencers from the point of view of validation, from the point of view of shared lived stories, experienced stories, become another very, very important, opportunity for you to be able to reach your audiences with a certain degree of credibility and trust through sources that they have trust and credibility on.
Fantastic. I think the advantage you folks also have is it's a very aspirational category, right? Like I sometimes just see content of 100, 500,000 crore houses just because it's fun. And, I've also seen people from across the, nation just tune into stuff like what's happening in Bombay and Delhi. So I think from an awareness standpoint, as you said, it's always good to be present there and kind of package your properties in a certain way. And influencers, of course, have risen quite a lot. And they have a very interesting way to also, I think, take you to the property, which I really enjoy too. We're almost at time, so I would love to kind of hop on to the last part of the podcast. And I always ask, our guests on behalf of the Indiefolio community, a question. So we are a network of the best design and video experts in India. These are freelancers as well as teams, and I think all of them would aspire to probably work in various brands. You've been there, and I think you must have also sanctioned a lot of work orders to such agencies. So could you tell me, in your opinion, what separates a good agency from a great agency?
People, first of all, people don't oversell. I hate sitting in conversations where I can clearly see the other person trying extra hard to sell something that they're not entirely sure about. You know, puts me off instinctively. Secondly, people who say that we can do everything under the sun for you. You know, back in the days, there used to be the concept of 360-degree marketing. Now it's obviously been changed and it has new names as one has evolved. But there are a lot of people who come and say, "हम आपके लिए सब कुछ कर देंगे." Everything you think. I don't like that at all because I really like to work with specialists who in their niches are unbeatable rather than work with generalists who have a knowledge of everything but they don't specialize in anything.
Correct.
You know, so I would really ask people to come absolutely clean saying that this one thing, I can promise you that I am in the top 5 in this country and nobody can do this better than me or in better than the top 5 circle that I'm a part of. Yeah.
Right.
So start saying no. Start being authentic and honest in terms of what you can do. That's the second one. And the third one is timelines and commitments to turnaround times. If you have committed a certain timeline, then there is no business of coming back and telling me, you know, there was a national holiday and there was a this and then there's a that, right? Because in that instinctively in my eyes, not makes me trust you anymore.
Right.
Yeah. So commit the timeline you're comfortable with. Even if the client pushes you on timelines, put your foot down and say, no, I will not work. Yeah. But at that point of time, just to get work, you commit on timelines which you don't ultimately end up honoring, then that's an absolute deal breaker. So I think these three things are supremely important for me. And the fourth is a certain chutzpah, a certain spunk of taking the risks of doing things that haven't been done before, and be honest and upfront with the client, saying that, listen, my core specialty is this, what I told you. I am the best in this, top 5 in this. This one thing, I want to pilot and I want to experiment. I'm telling you, I've not done this before. So cut me some slack on this particular one. But there is something new that I want to try. You know, that always greatly enthuses a brand or a partner on the other side of the table saying that, you know, here's a guy or a girl or a team that's willing to experiment with something that's not happened in the past. And that's inspiring for me personally.
Fantastic. I think some really, really good advice here, right? I think if I can kind of sum it up, very important is do what you say. I often feel if you don't do what you say, that's the bare minimum you can expect as a service company. And I think being authentic, innovating is extremely critical for a creative partner to kind of push the thought. And as you said, I think sell solutions, don't sell ideas. I think a lot of people get stuck to their ideas, but they're not understanding if it's a solution or not. So I think you've kind of, encapsulated all of the
Well, the guy you like to work with, even in your internal teams, is the guy or a girl, to be gender correct, who is the solutions person, is not the problems person. Somebody who can, throw his or her hand up and say, let me try and take care of this.
Correct.
Yeah, and I remember Barack Obama having made this point somewhere, I think in one of his speeches. And I'm paraphrasing what he said, but there is, I'm sure, an exact thing that you can do. That if there is 1 million people in the room, you will naturally gravitate to that one person who will say, give me the opportunity, let me try and take care of this few. Not people who talk about what is possible. We can do this, this can happen, this is doable. Can you, throw your hat into the ring and say that, let me do this for you? The doers, the actual doers, and not just the thinkers. Thinking is very good, but somebody needs to then fructify and make that convert into action.
Fantastic. Awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna, hop on the last question now. Karan, you've been incredible. I think some really, really profound advice. As a parting thought, I'd love for you to talk to, the younger folks who tune into our podcast, who maybe want to be in your shoe one day, right? They want to be a CMO one day, and they're young now. What are the things they should, focus on in their earlier parts of their career, which increases their chances, of being a leader one day?
Get your hands dirty as much as you can. Even if there's a lot of information available to you through secondary research, desk research, with all the platforms that's available, right, from your search platforms to your LLM platforms, there is no substitute. especially in the field of sales and marketing, than to be actually on ground and to dirty your shoes and to dirty your hands,
Mhm.
right? If you're a sales and marketing person, you cannot be successful if you don't have your ear to the ground and you can't have an understanding of what your consumer wants.
Mm.
So there is no substitute to hard work on that. Now, if you have fun on the way, even better. Create your own fun moments. Go out there and do a little bit of madness. Go out there and do a little bit of party and do a little bit of a jig every year and there. Have fun. Have fun. But while you're having fun, you need to understand that you need to be strongly anchored on ground. Keep your ears to the ground, keep your head on your shoulders, and your feet very, very firmly planted on the ground.
Fantastic. That's a great note to end the podcast on. Thank you so much, Karan. You've been incredible. I hope you had a good time.
I did. Fabulous. As I said, you asked me two brilliant questions where nobody ever has so far. So congratulations for doing that. No, I had fun. This is wonderful. And if there's anything as a follow-up that you ever want to do or people have questions about, I'll be more than happy to answer them in whatever is appropriate.
Of course, it was
Thank you very much.
it was totally worth the wait. I had a lot of fun as well to host you. And for everybody who's tuned in so far, thank you so much for waiting till the end. If you'd like to hear another marketing leader, please subscribe to our channels and a new episode will come out very, very soon. Bye-bye.